Well, this is Dr. Stan here at Radio Liberty, coming to you from the hills overlooking beautiful and picturesque Monterey Bay, and bringing you the news behind the news, the story behind the story. Hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at and that illusion is usually king. But in the battle for the survival of Christian civilization, it's going to be reality and not illusion or delusion that's going to determine what our future will bring. And our producer is having some difficulty with the telephone. Maybe she'd like to call Barbara or David, and they might be able to help her. But basically, we should be getting Dr. Blaylock. We wanted to talk to Dr. Blaylock tonight about Obamacare. And certainly Dr. Russell Blaylock, certainly been a good friend of mine for the better part of 30 years, and he certainly is a retired neurosurgeon. He's certainly one of the prolific writers on medical issues, and if you don't take the Blaylock, certainly a letter, you really should. I subscribe to it. I pay for it every month and get it, and I always enjoy what Russell has to say on medical issues. But tonight we're not going to be talking about the practice of medicine. We're going to be talking about what could be the greatest catastrophe ever to befall American medicine, and that is certainly the concept of Obamacare, and a program that is designed to take away from physicians the ability to treat patients and require them to treat the patient the way they're told. A massive amount of bureaucracy and paperwork that what we call force doctors to actually take on additional personnel just to fill out the paperwork. Doctors constantly under the threat of fines and imprisonment for actually doing what they think might be best for their patients. And, well, without further ado, Dr. Russell Blaylock, thank you very much for being with us, Russell.
Well, thank you, Stan. I appreciate it.
Well, why don't we just get into Obamacare, because I think this is really one of the greatest threats to the very survival not only of medicine, but certainly of our nation, because this certainly can bankrupt us economically. We're talking about millions of people now going on to Medicaid who were not there before. Medicaid and Medicare were costing well over $600 billion a year, and it certainly is going to be going up from there. You go right ahead.
Yeah, the implementation of full socialized medicine has been in the mind of these people for at least half a century. And they've been working inexorably to do that. Now, I remember before I was even in medical school when they were talking about this Medicare, Medicaid system to begin with for the poor. And the AMA supposedly was going to fight it, and they had their own program, which was a more equitable program, but it was rejected. And we ended up with Medicaid, and then the next they said, well, we'll also cover the older people because they're under threats of bankruptcy from their medical costs, and so then the elderly were included. So you had two segments of society, mass segments of society, were placed in a semi-socialist system of medical care, and of course it put the physician under a control system that's very similar to socialism as well. It's a collectivist system to get the physician used to taking orders and rules and regulations from the federal government and the state government at different levels. Now, we've been under this for, a good while now, some 40 years of this. It's cost trillions of dollars of unfunded debt, and now they're completing the gap that is between the very poor and the elderly, so everyone else will be included as well. Now, that is what seems obvious to most of us, is that this is a plan to transfer the United States to full socialized medical care under federal control, with the illusion that, well, we gave the capitalists and the free marketers a chance to do it on their own. They failed. Capitalism failed. It was fraught with greed and inefficiency, and so the government had to take it over.
Hold that thought, Russell. We're going to be back in just a minute. I guess Dr. Russell Blaylock, we're talking about Obamacare. Go right ahead.
So that was the illusion under which this plan was carried out. Now, if we look at the global aspect of this, not what's obvious to most people, if we look a little deeper, those of us who have been studying this for a very long period of time, like Dr. Monteith, who's been studying this a very long time, I've studied it a long time, what you see is not always what is the truth. This so-called Obamacare, this Affordable Health Care Act, actually was in the works for over a decade by hundreds of scholars and the tax-free foundations, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral. They've been working and tinkering with this 2,000 or 3,000 page bill for a very long period of time. While most physicians are under the impression that this was designed to work, actually it's not designed to work. It's designed to fail. And in fact, it's designed to do just exactly what we're seeing now. Is at every turn there's another disaster. At every turn, instead of improving and closing the gap of the uninsured and improving people's access to health care, it's made it infinitely worse, infinitely more expensive, and it's spread out to destroy jobs as well. For instance, you see all of these companies having to put their people on part-time. You're seeing hospitals that are being denied access to their patients. Doctors are being told they can no longer see their patients. Patients are told they can no longer see their doctors. These things are not mistakes. They're not glitches. This was all planned. This is to unseat the old world order. And as I tell people, if you know revolutionary methodology, in order to bring in the new world order or a new system, you have to destroy the old. This is just a principle of revolutionary philosophy. This is Marxism, Leninism, communism, socialism, Fabianism, and they all write about it, that in order to do this, we have to destroy everything that existed before. The social historian and analyst Gerhard Niemeyer calls it the total critique of society. That is the total dismantlement of the culture, of the economy, of religion, of everything that existed before. The first true expression of this was the French Revolution.
Hold that thought, Russell. We'll be back here in just a moment. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and Russell is simply saying that you may look at Obamacare. Certainly, how could they do such a bad job unintentionally? And, of course, the answer is they didn't do it unintentionally. This whole system is designed to fail. And he pointed out that you're not going to be able to go to your doctor. Now, President Obama said you could go to your doctor. You could keep your health insurance. But, of course, what you don't understand is that, according to this, many people are not going to be able to have their doctor. They're not going to be able to keep their insurance policy. And, of course, he said you can go to the hospital you want to. Well, what you do not understand is that a number of major hospitals in this country, Sloan Kettering, MD Anderson Cancer Clinic in Texas, and certainly major hospitals throughout the country that the government thinks are just too expensive, they're not going to allow patients to go there. So basically, why would they set up a system that would deprive patients of the right to go to the doctor they wanted to, for the doctor to send their patients to the hospitals they wanted to? Dr. Blaylock says, and I think he's absolutely right, this whole program is designed to fail. Why? Because they want to bring in total control. They want to bring in total socialism. And I would simply point out, ladies and gentlemen, what I've pointed out many times before, we have far more socialism in the United States today than they ever had in either Russia or China. But the average American doesn't understand that. Or why, on one hand, we're supposedly combating communism in China, on the other hand, doing everything we can to transfer our industries over there and to allow them to bring their products into the United States, certainly without tariffs, whereas they put up tariff barriers to our products. And China has the largest the largest export level. In other words, they're making more money from their exports than any other country in the world today. Massive amounts of money. They're making $1 trillion certainly from their exports, and of course, so much of that money is coming from America. And yet, it's so supposedly why we're anti-communist, or are we? Go right ahead, Russell.
Well, that's a very good summary. And, what I've observed over many years of reading and studying and following history with my own personal observation, as well as scholars who've studied it closely, what we're seeing is a demonstration to the American public and the world at large that capitalism is a failure, that it's been tried, that it's fraught with greed, it's inefficient, it's unjust, it can even be cruel, and it's filled with inequities that leave people destitute. And the only solution is a compassionate government, which is not interested in making profit, is interested only in the welfare of the people. And, of course, that's the program that's being sold. Now, the reason they want this to fail is, I think what's going to happen is once it totally fails and collapses, is they say, well, we tried it. We tried mixing government with the free market, with capitalism, to give capitalism a chance to do what was right, and it failed. It cannot mix. It's oil and water. So we're going to have to get rid of capitalism and the free market completely. Only the representatives in government who represent the true interests of the people can be just, can be an equitable form of distribution of health care as well as everything else. This is what's going to be sold after the collapse. But first they have to show that you cannot mix benevolent government with greedy capitalism. And this is being hammered every day into the American public's mind. And it's being taught in all the schools. The children are being taught in public schools that capitalism is evil, it causes maldistribution, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and the rich get rich off the backs of the poor. They give historical examples which they manufacture. And so the youth are convinced that socialism, collectivism of some kind is the only equitable answer. That's the purpose of this and why it was engineered. And when you think the number of people that were involved in creating this so-called Affordable Health Care Act, the level of intelligence of these people, you couldn't have these many obvious failures. For instance, it was pointed out by Fox News that here people are told to sign up, send their money into the government, and then there's no system by which the insurance companies are paid, so you think you have coverage, and then when you go to the hospital you find out you don't. Now, anyone in a high school grade education could have seen that gap existed. The failures of the website, all of the people could see that existed. Your exposure of your private financial information, your Social Security number, that could easily have been seen by anyone. And, of course, the hackers said, this website is a hacker's dream. We have access to every bit of your financial information. We can ruin anybody who registers on this. And, of course, if you look at this system when it says before they sold this to the Congress and the American public, you can keep your physician. Absolutely. This is not to take away your physician. Now, you think they didn't know that they took away your physician? It was obvious that anyone had read the bill. Other things that are deep in this bill that are going to destroy the physicians and produce a transition that most people are not aware of is that most physicians are not going to be able to survive in this. That is the American physician. They're either going to retire early, they're going to find other occupations, or they're going to severely restrict their practice. Now, the government already has a contingency plan, and that is to bring in massive numbers of foreign doctors, Cubans, Chinese, people from third world nations. There's a huge resource of foreign doctors ready to come in and take up that practice that the Americans and physicians are going to leave in droves.
Well, Russell, it's really very interesting. Over in England, their healthcare system, most of the doctors are probably, a great percentage of the doctors are foreign doctors, because the British doctors just wouldn't go along with that system. There was a report that came out today. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it said that in California, 70% of the physicians were not going to participate. And even if that figure is wrong, maybe it's only 50%, imagine what would happen with really the millions of people coming into the healthcare delivery system and half of the doctors suddenly not being available.
Well, and that's exactly what. And I had a lot of physicians ask me that. I said, well, if all these doctors quit, they're not going to be able to do this. And I said, well, they have a contingency. They have hundreds of thousands of foreign physicians ready to rush in immediately and take up that space. And they're going to be practicing the medicine on you. That's going to be your new doctor, a doctor you can hardly communicate with, a doctor who cares very little about you. At the time of Katrina, the Cuban government was going to send in hundreds of physicians in the state of Mississippi. And the governor of Mississippi said, no, we don't want them. Stay out. So they'd already made an attempt to rush these Cuban communist physicians into the United States. So they have them waiting in the wings, ready to take the place of the physicians who have to quit. As I told physicians, if you read this bill carefully, you will never take another vacation. You will never have a free weekend. You will spend every moment filling out forms, because everything requires massive documentation. Everything has to be carefully documented in every aspect of the care. There's not that much time in the day, so a physician will never have any free time. He will become exhausted and will not be able to do this. He'll be forced to quit his employment, and a lot of physicians are going to have commit suicide, are going to have nervous breakdowns, because they're already stretched to the limit now with lawsuits and bureaucratic paperwork as it is. This is going to increase it 1,000-fold. The other thing is physicians are going to be punished for things that's beyond their control. For instance, it says if they discharge a patient and that patient has to come back to the emergency room because of complications or some other reason, the physician and the hospital both are going to be punished. That's going to encourage hospitals to take them off of their staff. That's going to be encouraging these financial institutions to punish the physician for having to do that. Well, if they're forced to release the patient early, which this bill in fact does, there's going to be more patients that are going to have to come back into the emergency room when they develop complications. Well, the physician is the one, and the hospital are the ones that are going to be punished for this. And, of course, who is the one that's really punished the worst is going to be the patient, because the patient's going to be railroaded out of the hospital before they should leave. The decision's going to be taken away from the physician, and it's going to be taken away from the patient. The patient's going to suffer, and the doctor's going to suffer, and the hospital's going to suffer. With this, for instance, in our state here, Blue Cross Blue Shield has now denied patients access to two of our major hospitals, the ones I used to operate in. So your patient no longer can go to either one of those hospitals to have their care, their hospitalization care. So this could mean in smaller communities, physicians may have to send their patients 50, 100 miles away to the only hospital that's acceptable by these chosen insurance companies. This is going to be a disaster for the patient and the physician.
And I think it's so difficult for the people to believe that the President of the United States would go on television and said, you can go to any doctor you want, you can go to your doctor, you can go to your hospital. And he was lying. I mean, he was frankly lying to the American people on television. I heard him on Jay Leno make the statement, you can keep your insurance policies.
Sure.
But basically, is that he didn't know? I think he did know. I think that this whole thing is part of a pattern to confuse the American people. We find it so difficult to believe the President of the United States would lie. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a liar. We'll be back in a moment.
While the storm clouds gather.
Well, go right ahead, Russell.
Well, you're exactly right. He is a liar, and he is being told to lie. He's part of the engineering of this lie. The people who are engineering this and telling him to tell this bold-faced lie were the people who created this bill, the people in the tax-free foundations, the people in the Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral. These are the powerful multinational corporations, international banking houses, and people in positions of political power and influence in the media. If you check who makes up the boards of these tax-free foundations and the CFR Trilateral Commission, that's exactly who make up these boards. Well, who is benefiting from this socialized health care system? They are, because they're the chosen ones. The top insurance companies in the world are members of these organizations. They're the ones who have been chosen. All the rest are going to disappear. The lesser insurance companies will be destroyed. They'll collapse. And then you'll have these mega international insurance companies that are also banking houses are going to be the winners. Well, even if they charge less for the procedures, if you cover everybody in the United States, you're going to make a lot more money, infinitely huge amounts of money from a socialist health care system. And that's what a lot of conservatives don't even understand. They say, well, why would a multinational insurance company want to have a socialized health care system? Won't they lose money? No. It's guaranteed patients. Instead of having 20 million patients, you'll have 200 million patients that you cover, or people you cover. And the taxpayer will pay the bill. It'll be paid automatically. There's no waiting. There's no default. It's an automatic check in the mail for covering 200 million, 300 million people. It'll be shared by 2 or 3 major largest insurers in the country. Same thing for pharmaceutical companies, medical manufacturers, hospital organizations. The chosen ones, the ones who are members of CFR and Trilateral, are going to be the winners. They're the chosen ones. So they love the system where the government does it. This is pure fascism, corporatism. This is what's made China enormously wealthy. China understood that pure communism cannot survive economically. Pure socialism can't survive economically. But if you take the huge multinational corporations and you go in league with them, the people who know how to generate massive amounts of money, then you become extremely wealthy. And that's what China did, even though it's still a socialist-run country, a communist country. It's using what vestige of capitalism is allowed to remain as the goose that lays the golden egg. So this is how the new socialism works. And you see, when you argue with socialists, and you hear people argue on national networks, what the socialist does, they use the old model where government nationalizes everything. They say, well, we're not nationalizing everything. So this is socialism. Well, it is modern socialism, which is the Antonio Gramsci model, in which what we do is we work with the international financiers. We work with the international banking firms.
Hold that thought, Russell. We'll be back in just a moment here. Well, that's Dr. Stan, and Russell is simply clarifying this whole confusion about socialism. And basically, of course, he's pointing out that when Obama makes these statements, he is not simply, he's doing exactly what he's told to. Obama is simply a tool of the power elite that runs this country, and Russell identifies them as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and that is absolutely true. Now, basically, then, suddenly this whole medical scheme scheme is tied into the great insurance companies and some of the health care insurance companies. And if you look at the boards of the people who control these major health care insurance corporations, companies, well, you find that they all tie into the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. And basically, of course, people really don't understand that this move towards socialism is funded by people of great wealth. Why would people of great wealth want to certainly centralize power in government? Because they control the government and they will prosper from it, and they're the ones who are running the government. And so basically they fund socialism, and this idealistic socialist out there is working hard to give power to the government so the government can take care and certainly keep those wicked capitalists from taking advantage of the people. Whereas actually what people do not understand is that these people of great wealth are the ones that are pushing socialism and financing socialism, and they're the people behind Obamacare. This is not Obamacare. This is not affordable health care. This is being foisted upon us by the power elite, the fascist elite, which dominates both political parties and makes mockery out of the so-called democratic process. Go right ahead, Russell.
That's an excellent summary that explains it about as clear as it could be explained. Is if you look at this is the question I pose to people who doubt this. I said, well, look at the wealth of the tax-free foundations, which is made up of almost all the contributors, the board members, are all of the most powerful multinational corporations in the world, the most powerful financial houses. Look at the Council on Foreign Relations, same group of people, Trilateral Commission, same group of people. Look at all the wealth of all the multinational corporations in America. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars. They have powerful influence. They can control the media. They have a powerful influence on the media. Many of these media mongols are members of these organizations. Now, if you pool all that together and say, well, the war is between socialism and capitalism, you can see very quickly that if it was true capitalism that we're talking about here, with that pooled wealth, they could have informed the public. They could have changed the educational system. They could have exposed the failures of socialism around the world. But they didn't. As you pointed out, and others have pointed out in numerous scholarly works, they have used their wealth to promote socialism throughout the world. They have propped up every communist government in the world. All these communist governments would have failed long ago, except for the vast amount of wealth being poured into them by multinational corporations and banking firms. Even Solzhenitsyn hinted at it in his book, that the great wealth created Hitler, it created fascist Italy, it created the Soviet system, it bankrolled the Fabian socialists, it bankrolled virtually all of the socialist movements in the world. So you can come to no other conclusion that the reason the socialists are so successful, the reason that they're growing so rapidly and being accepted, is because of the massive infusion of money and influence by the multinational corporations. And it's been pointed out by some of the scholars of the free market that multinational corporations are in no way part of the free market. They are not capitalists. They hate capitalism. They detest it. They detest competition. And everything they do is designed to destroy competition. And they do that by influencing government to create massive regulations and oppressive taxation on businesses. This kills their competitors before that competitor can grow large enough to cause them any danger. They're using all of this machinations in the government for that very reason, because it protects them. They can pay these taxes. They can pay people to follow these regulations without any problem whatsoever. And with their power and influence, they're writing the bills that Congress is passing. This is what a lot of people don't understand. Many of the bills that end up in Congress first originated in these multinational corporation-controlled organizations like CFR and Trilateral. They're written there, handed to the Congress, and Congress then enacts them. They're not coming from your representatives in Congress the way it was intended by our founding fathers.
Hold that right there.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer.
Russell, you go right ahead.
You know, as you pointed out in some of your previous programs, Dan, if you look at the great wars that's been fought by the United States, and many scholars have meticulously examined it, the multinational corporations, the international banking houses, were the funders of these wars because they made huge amounts of wealth. They decided winners and losers. The Vietnam War is a perfect case. Here's a war that lasted 10 years. We fought in a country the size of, New Jersey, and the most powerful military nation in the world spent 10 years and lost the war. Now, no one of any reasonable, logical sense could anyway defend the idea that this happened without people in the shadows manipulating things. And when we closely examine the whole Vietnam War, we see it was designed to fail from the very beginning. They put every impediment in the way of the soldiers and the military generals to prevent the United States from winning that war, or even having it where you had a situation like Korea, where it's divided into two halves. It was completely lost. All of Southeast Asia was lost. Well, look at Vietnam now. Who's in Vietnam? The multinational corporations. They're making huge amounts of money. Who's drilling oil wells off the coast of Vietnam? It's the multinational corporation oil company. I didn't even realize that till I looked it up and found out they've drilled huge offshore rigs all the way off the coast of Vietnam, which is bringing in massive amounts of oil. So here they engineer a war, they lose the war, and then they end up being favored by the communist government to bring these businesses in and make huge amounts of money. Same thing happened with China, same thing's happening with Russia. We're going through that transition in Cuba now. So as you see, what happens is they create this turmoil, they create a war. It costs thousands
Hold that thought, Russell. We'll be back in a moment. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and Russell is simply pointing out how they create turmoil, how they manipulate us into a 10-year no-win war in Vietnam. We fought 10 years against this country the size of the state of New Jersey. We lost the war. So what's happening today? Why American corporations are over there in Vietnam making a lot of money. American oil rigs are off the shore there, are drilling oil and raking in billions of dollars, certainly. But the average American really doesn't understand that these wars are never fought for the reasons that we're told, and when it all ends up, why we find American corporations making a great deal of money, just as we have American corporations like General Motors over there in China today, building all sorts of cars and making a fabulous amount of money, but we never talk about that. Why would so many of our major corporations be certainly working in communist China and communist Vietnam today? Why, very simply because this whole barrier between communism and capitalism is totally created. Certainly, it's wonderful to talk about, but it has very little to do with reality. The communists have always financed the capitalists. I should say the capitalists have always financed the communists and eventually always end up profiting from it. Go right ahead, Russell.
Yeah, if you look at the Russian Revolution, for instance, when Lenin finally won his victory over the Mensheviks and took power in Russia, within a short period of time, Russia was bankrupt. The communist system, as implemented under Marxism-Leninism, totally failed. It could no longer fund its military, couldn't feed its people. Lenin very quickly realized that people were going to revolt and his experiment in communism would be over. So what did he do? He instituted what was called the New Economic Policy, the NEP. And what that was to bring in American and UK and Western corporations and let them rebuild his country. And that's exactly what we did. We built the biggest Ford Motor Company plant. John Deere went in. General Motors, the UK began to build engines for their military, and as Anthony Sutton carefully categorized as a study by the government, something like 80 to 90% of the Russian military was built outside of the Soviet Union by the West, mainly the UK, Germany, France, and the United States. So here we created our own enemy. Now, most of us that grew up during that period, all we heard about was, the fear of Russian attack by nuclear missiles, and we had to have all this preparation and all this military build-up to protect us against the Russians, and nuclear war and the end of the world was just right around the corner. What the public didn't know, that virtually all the military of the Soviet Union had been built by the West. The ICBMs had been given to the Soviets, the plans for MIRVing the missiles, for transporting some of the most high-tech nuclear devices to the Russians. Their jets look exactly like our jets. When we came out with the F-15, here comes I think it was the MiG-23. It looked exactly like it. They were mirror images. When we came out with the Polaris submarine, the nuclear submarine, in a short period of time, Russia had one, looked exactly like it. Had the same Polaris assembly. So we build our own enemies, and this is exactly what happened with China in our own time. Here they had missiles they tried to fire and test. Their missiles were so poorly constructed, one of them ended up blowing up a village, killing 2,000 people. They couldn't even clear the ground with the things. Well, under the Clinton administration, one of the biggest high-tech companies for missile guidance systems went to China and rebuilt all of their missiles so it could reach the United States with accuracy equal to our missiles. And he MIRVed the missiles for them, which makes them infinitely more deadly. That is, you have 10 warheads per missile. They didn't have that technology until Clinton allowed his biggest financial contributor to go to China and reconfigure all of their missiles so that they could reach anywhere in the world. So now we've created another enemy. And their ships, all of their missile system, their anti-missile systems, all built in the West. So we build our own enemies. And we're doing this in the Middle East. Here we have the Muslim Brotherhood, which was created by Hitler and financed by Hitler. In fact, he promised al-Husseini, who was the head of the Muslim Brotherhood during Hitler's reign, that when he won the war, he would let him run the Reich in the Middle East. So all of this turmoil that's occurring in the Middle East first started with Hitler's Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is now run by the KGB, or the new FSB. The imams that are supposedly Islamic fundamentalists actually are KGB-trained agents. So all of this myth of Islam and the fundamentalist Islam, radical Islamics, is a cover. They're really international socialists. And in their own writings, they say our goal is international socialism. It's not international Islamic rule. And you look at Arafat. Arafat was trained and was a KGB operative. Yet the world was told that he was this fanatical religious person of the Islamic faith. The only one who's the Islamic radical is the poor young person over there who believes this stuff that he's being told, and he goes and blows himself up. But the people at the top of this so-called Islamic revolution, the Muslim Brotherhood leaders and Al-Qaeda, they're all hardcore socialists, and they're international socialists. They're working also for the New World Order. So everything you see is an illusion, and that's why you have this president over there pouring money into the Muslim Brotherhood, secretly giving missiles, surface-to-air missiles, to the Al-Qaeda group, like in Mogadishu or Benghazi. This is what was the whole attack there was about. Benghazi was the Navy SEALs and the CIA were trying to find out where all of these missiles that came from the United States, who they were going to, and they had discovered it, and so they had to destroy all of the records. So they had this raid, burned all the records, killed the ambassador, killed the Navy SEALs, and destroyed all the records in the CIA office. In fact, it came out during an investigation. Well, why was the CIA next door to the ambassador's office? What is this about? And why were Navy SEALs assigned to it? But then when it came time to defend that CIA office and this intelligence, Obama and Hillary Clinton ordered them not to defend them, so they were slaughtered. Interestingly, Gaddafi, almost 10 years before, had warned the reporter Arnold de Bourges-Gravé and told him that, in fact, Benghazi was the headquarters of Al-Qaeda, and he needed help from the United States to stop them. He was terrified of them. So for 10 years he was trying to get the United States. He wanted to work with the CIA. What he didn't know was that he was being set up to be assassinated. And what happened is he decided he was going to separate from the World Bank. He was going to create his own currency. He was going to back it with gold, and he told the World Bank and the international bankers he wanted nothing to do with them. He wanted them out of his country. And, of course, very quickly they killed him. So he knew too much, and he was separating from the World Bank, which is not allowed in the international banking cartel. So that's not allowed, and you'll be overthrown. That's what happened to Gaddafi, and that's what's happening in Syria, and that's what's happening in Egypt. They want this most radical socialist KGB element in power, and that's what they're working for, to keep this turmoil going. Well, as long as it's going, these international corporations are making huge amounts of money. And you have to realize the Middle East, particularly Israel, Jerusalem area, has one of the largest oil supplies in the world, far greater than Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or these other areas that we hear about frequently. There's huge oil reserves, huge mineral reserves that are a cherry that they want to pick. So that's why we're having all this turmoil, so there'll be a transfer of power. The international corporations will walk in and take control. So nothing that goes on in the world is what you think it is. We're being lied to daily by all the news organizations, by our government, just on a regular basis.
Well, I think it's so difficult for people to understand why we're fighting al-Qaeda and the Islamic terrorists, certainly in Afghanistan, and yet we're funding, certainly, the mercenaries in Syria, and those mercenaries are al-Qaeda and Islamic terrorists. So why are we fighting, certainly, these people in Afghanistan and funding them in Syria? Because it's all phony, and the average American finds it so difficult to believe, and yet that's exactly what's happening. In fact, certainly, we are funding. There's no civil war in Syria. This is certainly simply professional mercenaries hired with our tax money, probably money from Saudi Arabia and one or two of the other countries over there, Dubai. And we're funding these mercenaries. We train them, we arm them, and then we fund them. And then we send them on in to fight, and again, they've killed almost 120,000 civilians over there. The people that we are funding are the ones that are over there, going into the Christian villages and burning them down and killing the Christians. And certainly most of the Christians have fled from Syria because they fear the terrorists funded with American tax dollars. Go right ahead.
Well, and that's exactly right, is that the war against Christianity in the Middle East and in the African continent is bloody. Like you say, they've killed over 100,000 Christians. They're packing churches with women and children and babies, and they're burning it down, roasting them alive. They're beheading them. They're going in villages and slaughtering the Christians one after another. In these brutal attacks that are just heart-rending. And the world has not even responded. The media is not covering the story. The major Christian churches aren't informing their people about this. There's very little defense except for a handful of organizations trying to defend these people that are being slaughtered by these socialist elements. But they're trying to destroy true religion in the Middle East, particularly the fastest-growing religion, which is Christianity. And this is one of the things that has frightened them, is that Christianity is rapidly growing in the Islamic countries. And that's pretty well unknown to most Westerners. We don't think that, but that's what terrifies these Islamic rulers that are socialists, is that the Christianity is growing among their people so rapidly, and they're losing control. And the other thing is look at some of the other African countries, the assault on Rhodesia, the assault on South Africa. Those two countries were the most wealthy, safest, orderly countries in all of Africa. The black people from other countries, particularly the socialist-held countries, were flowing into those countries for protection, for jobs, for safety. And yet the world was told that the most evil thing in all of Africa was apartheid and the Rhodesian government under Ian Smith. Yet that did not conform to examination. For instance, Mandela recently died, and we had all of this we got to lower the flags at half-mast, and we've got to have all of these documentaries about what a great man he was in peace and how he finally destroyed evil apartheid. This is a man that was convicted of a crime of 132 acts of terrorism, in which men, women, children, hundreds of thousands of blacks were slaughtered. The Zulus were slaughtered by the ANC, led by the Mandelas. People were necklaced. They put a tire full of gasoline over their head and burn them to death. There's video you can watch on YouTube that's sickening of what's going on in South Africa. They totally destroyed it. They destroyed the economy. It has the highest murder rate in virtually all of Africa. It has the highest rape rate. Over half the people are infected with HIV. And one of his last acts was to greatly expand abortion in South Africa. So this is a guy who was put on trial for 132 acts of bloody terrorism against not only whites but against blacks. And the court trial was so fair, Amnesty International said it was a completely fair trial. He was guilty of all the crimes, and they refused to intervene. So he was given a 26-year prison term, or 27 years. And the people who came independently to look at the trial and the transcript said he got off very easily. In any other country, they would have executed him.
Because he was responsible for the murder of so many women and children. He actually pleaded guilty to that. And he didn't deny he was part of this communist revolutionary movement. And the fact that we're not hearing about that on the media here in America today is simply a reflection of the degree of control that exists of what the American people think. But if you want to verify what Russell is saying, just go to Google and type in New American Magazine, article Nelson Mandela. You should get the article that just came out today. New American Magazine, Nelson Mandela. Read it and weep and understand the media in America is rigidly controlled. Go right ahead.
Well, and so then you look at, well, who was behind this? Well, the multinational corporations again. They orchestrated this campaign in America, that the most evil government was South Africa. Don't buy the Cougaran. Don't do business with South Africa. So the people who had built the business of South Africa began to leave in droves. And the most radical element took over. They killed hundreds of thousands of black people. They dug pits in the ground where they would put young black kids with bamboo cages over the top of them, submerged in water until they starved to death. Thousands of these kids were killed this way. The horror of what Mandela and his wife, Winnie Mandela, did to the black and the white people of South Africa is absolutely horrifying. Never entered the news. We were never told that. And now here he gets the Nobel Peace Prize, and we're just having crocodile tears pour out over the death of this great man. And, of course, they'll name every airport and street in America after him now. It's really sickening that we take these disgusting, vile murderers, vicious people beyond belief.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free.
Well, Russell, we're just about out of time. You got about 2 minutes to wrap up the program.
Well, I hope what we've shown here is that all of this is planned to destroy the old world order so it can be replaced by a new world order. As I said, this is a revolutionary principle that you have to destroy everything that existed previously, culture, economy, religion, all has to be destroyed so it can be replaced, just as they did in the French Revolution. And they're trying to do this the world over. The people behind it are the ones that gain the most from it, that is the multinational corporations, international financial banking firms, and the politicians who are in their pocket and controlled by them. And the media is playing their role in keeping the truth away from the American people so that they'll never know what's going on. And our only solution is, of course, to pray, to come back to our religious understanding, and that is that Jesus is our Savior. We've got to return to our Christian foundation. It's our only hope in this battle. We can't fight it as a secular war.
I think you're absolutely right. We indeed are involved in a spiritual battle for the souls of men. Russell, thank you so very much for being with us. As always, it's a great pleasure. We'll look forward to talking again sometime real soon.
Well, thank you, Stan, and God bless you.
And you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The This is Dr. Stan back here at Radio Liberty, and this is the time when I need to remind our listeners all across America, indeed all across the world, that my ministry, Radio Liberty, is primarily listener-supported, and if you're in a position to help us, well, we'd love to hear from you. And I know a lot of people are having real financial problems today, and I think they're only going to get worse. But if you suddenly are in a position to help us, we'd love to hear from you. If you're not in a position to help us, then we ask you to pray for my ministry, Radio Liberty, for our provision and for our protection. Now, basically, of course, we hope that many of you will want to get our materials so you can really understand the background of what's going on today. We do carry a number of the books that certainly Dr. Blaylock was talking about. He talked about Anthony Sutton's book, going into the background of the financing of the Russians. That's Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution by Professor Sutton. How do we finance the Nazis? Well, that's Wall Street and the rise of Hitler. Wall Street and the rise of Hitler. And, of course, we have a number of other books. We actually have a 4-CD set on how certainly American corporations financed Adolf Hitler, and that is called The War Against the Jews. It's 4 CDs. We carry the book America's Nazi Secret and The Secret War Against the Jews, written by John Loftus. We carry other books, certainly Dr. Cuddy's book, The Power Elite and the Secret Nazi Plan. They're all available by calling 1-800-544-8927, 1-800-544-8927. And, of course, we funded this whole world terrorist movement. Why would we fund the terrorist movement? Well, you have to have an enemy, ladies and gentlemen. If we didn't have the enemy, how could we get the American people to rally behind the government and give up our freedom and justify having their spies and their people listening to all of our telephone conversations? Well, basically, my wife was just commenting that my voice wasn't coming through very loud on the board here, so I just had my son come on in to check that out. But basically, of course, it's vitally important that people understand that we are financing the terrorist movement. If you want to really believe what happened on September 11th, 2001 was what you were told, you're sadly mistaken. We have 2 4-CD sets, 911 and 911 updated, and then, of course, we actually carry 2 DVDs by Richard Gage. They're available. You can get them all by calling 1-800-544-8927, and we recommend those DVDs. You need to understand that those buildings, the Twin Towers, were brought down by controlled demolition. All you need to do is go up on the internet today and simply type in on your search engine building number 7 and watch it come down. And basically you'll see how the set of the roof falls first and then the base of the building gives way. It's a controlled demolition. And once you understand it's controlled demolition, then of course everything fits into place. And also certainly 6 of the 19 hijackers are alive and well, living in the Middle East. If you doubt that, go to your search engine and put in, certainly the 6 of the 19 hijackers are living well in the Middle East, and you'll find that they're living well. Now, how could they have died that day? How could they have died that day and then come back to life? And I really don't know how that could have happened, but apparently it did happen. So basically you must understand most of what you think you know is really not true. And we certainly do what we do 5 hours a day, and we've had to actually give up our weekend program for financial reasons, but we're still doing 5 hours a day, 5 days a week on stations all across America. It's expensive. If you can help us, give us a call. 1-800-544-8927, 1-800-544-8927, and please pray for America, pray for revival, but pray for Radio Liberty for our provision and for our protection. And we'll be back here in just a moment at Radio Liberty.